It's Thursday again, tell everybody to lock in, grab some popcorn, a drink, and go and throw your AirPods in. It's the 1 hour show, constantly speaking facts. Bulletproof stats are always shooting from Matt. And when it comes to Kyle, you getting numbers and style. Jake is gonna educate you, he has that knowledge on file. Players, step your game up, don't be sluggish or lazy. Or Jimmy J might hit you with a shaky baby. Catch him on YouTube or any podcast platform. Breaking all the news down like Shaq does the backboards. No hot takes, this is where the hottest debate's at. Now kick your feet up, cause it's time for straight facts.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Straight Facts, a sports show that educates and entertains, brought to you by the Up On Game Presents Network. As always, make sure you're following them on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts and your content. Go check them boys out, because you could check these boys out. Jimmy J with my guys, Jake Galley and Stat Matt Robertson. They love to do this to me, y'all. They love to tell me oh, James, I got a good at the buzzer at the end of the episode. And then Jake goes, I don't think you're going to like this one. So just like Matt did 2 weeks ago, I'm just going to be sitting in suspense for an hour. And then Jake is going to unveil some grand at the buzzer. It better be good, man.
I'll just little hint. I came across a stat on Twitter that will allow me to talk my talk as I usually do on this podcast. So it's a little sneak peek.
Delusion. That's what you saw.
That's
what you saw. And Matt said he has a heartwarming one. So that's good. I thought you were going to update us on, you have the Liverpool shirt on. So I thought you were going to update us on soccer again at the buzzer.
It's still preseason.
That's true. That shows you how unplugged I am to the soccer season. But guess what? It's almost preseason for the sport of football that everyone in America watches. And that's American football, because training camp just started for a whole bunch of teams. So that natural excitement, that natural anticipation for football is coming around the corner. And I know a lot of teams are feeling it. Our two teams in particular, two Eagles fans and a Bucks fan, have made some pretty good additions that has our fan bases hyped. So we're going to stay on that side of the conference on the NFC, and we're going to talk about the new additions, NFC addition to these teams, and just see who's new to these teams' training camps. And are they going to have as big of impact as we think, or are they going to have an impact at all? Bring it in. So we'll start right here in Philly for addressing, which is, I believe, the third or fourth time on this podcast, but it can't be stated enough about the Eagles going and getting A.J. Brown in this trade. Just to summarize it again, they sent the 2022 first and fourth for A.J. Brown and then signed him to a 4-year, $100 million contract, which in the NFL for a receiver is what we call buku bucks. So you guys gave that boy a bag, but for good reason. And the question we're going to probably frame all these new additions to is, what type of impact is this addition going to have to the new team? So Matt, go ahead and talk your stuff first, man. What is AJ Brown? How does AJ Brown really beef up the Eagles?
Honestly, it's great that we have it's a security blanket wide receiver. We haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Jeremy Mcgloin in 2014. And Jordan Matthews got close one year. We had Ertz got 1,000, but he's a tight end. And having just that big body, it's such a great safety valve for a developing quarterback like Jalen Hurts. When you have someone like AJ Brown, who really likes Jalen Hurts, they're actually good friends. Mm-hmm. And has played his career with a quarterback that isn't the best in Ryan Tannehill, he still put up numbers. So I don't expect, if Hurts struggles, Brown will still put up really good numbers. And it's just he's 24. The fact that he's this young is so fantastic. Every time I think about the trade, I like it more.
I was just going to say that, Matt. One, it's shocking how young he is. I was he's the veteran calming present. No, he's 24. He is a couple years younger than I am.
But he still has that feeling to him of coming in as the calming veteran to kind of, almost last piece to the puzzle kind of scenario thing. He has that vibe around him.
And I think played in an AFC title game.
Right. He has experience, and I also think it's because of the team he's coming to. Compared to the past couple years of wide receiver core, this is the best honestly, this is the best talent at wide receiver the Eagles have had since Terrell Owens, like going all the way back almost 20 years ago, just about. So I think that this is a guy who's going to allow the Eagles to do a lot of things they thought they were going to be able to do with Jalen Reagor, a guy who you can throw the ball to, let him run and run past people, a guy who can run past people, you bomb it over the top. And low key, I think they're going to hand the ball to him a little bit. Nick Sirianni loves wide receiver core. He was a wide receiver coach over in Indianapolis, loves to get his wide receivers involved. And I think, with an offense like the Eagles, where you probably are going to want to run the ball a lot, having that kind of offbeat play where you can hand it, maybe it's Quez Watkins, maybe it's A.J. Brown. He actually only has 5 career carries, which I thought he was used way more in Tennessee. Maybe I'm just imagining Jonnu Smith. But either way, I think that they're going to get him the ball in a lot of unique spots and let him kind of work his magic. And for a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, that is invaluable.
Yeah. I mean, he's a go-get-it receiver. Like, he's wide body, big target, and not many cornerbacks are going to be able to beat him physically to the football. And I think it's almost funny because he has experience and good success with a not so great quarterback. And people have, kind of question marks of how good Jalen Hurts is going to be in the league, especially coming in this year. Well, it's not like A.J. Brown is coming from, a pro, or, he's coming from a Pro Bowl quarterback, but not coming from an all-pro quarterback, or not coming from an MVP type quarterback. He's coming from a quarterback who, can be looked at as very middle of the pack and doesn't throw super high volume. So he's used to making the most out of the certain few number of targets he's going to get per game. And I think he was able to help Ryan Tannehill in this way that he's going to help Jalen Hurts. Like, Ryan Tannehill isn't known for throwing the ball deep downfield. But yet you look at A.J. Brown's production, and he has these chunk plays in his resume, like one of just 3 wide receivers to average more than 10 yards per target on at least 250 targets in the last 25 years. So I give you that stat, and you're like, oh, he played with Josh Allen? Like, oh, he played with Pat Mahomes? Like, no, he played with Ryan Tannehill. So he's still able to, and we could just be honest. Those 10-plus yards targets aren't all, right on the money throws. They're not throws with smoke behind them. These are balls that he's had to go and get from defenders. He's not putting in a handbasket for him. And I think he's going to have to continue to exercise that muscle and help Jalen Hurts come along. And I think that's going to make the Eagles offense look better. I think it's going to help Jalen Hurts progress. Like, that's the receiver you guys haven't been willing to go get forever. You've been willing to go get the speedster. You've been willing to go get the possession jump ball receiver and Alshon Jeffrey, but you haven't gone and got this guy. I'm just more of a specimen at receiver than you, and you finally went and got him.
Well, that guy's not always out on the market to go get. That's why I think Howard Roseman was so aggressive in going out, not only trading the 1st and 4th for him, but also then on top of that, like you said, James, you have to give him all this money, but I do think it's worth it. And just wanted to touch back and frame my point about making sure that A.J. Brown is touching the ball. Deebo Samuel last year, people raved that the Niners were giving him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. He touched the ball 136 times and averaged 13 yards per touch. Insanity, right? Mm-hmm. So that's 136 touches in a year. A.J. Brown has got 190 touches for his career. Over 3 years, 190 touches. So when you look at trying to get them, when you're paying a guy $25 million a year, number one, and then looking to
the rock.
Right, he's gonna touch it. You're gonna touch the football a lot, and so that's what, as an Eagles fan and as someone who is kind of bullish on this Eagles offense, like that's the big gain of value in adding a guy like A.J. Brown. Is now you can kind of go any which way, and it's going to end up decent as long as he's getting his hands on the rock.
Yeah. So if you just look at the Eagles, they're a team that runs the ball a lot. A.J. Brown's fine with that, even though wide receivers are known to be, give me the ball, give me the ball. He played with Derrick Henry when he had 2,000 yards. Like, that's not going to be a thing when we call runs for Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts and whoever we decide to run the ball with. And so we had the number 1 run game in the NFL, an historically good run game if you look like post-week 7. And we have a developing Devontae Smith. who had a very good rookie year, and we got an all-pro wide receiver in A.J. Brown. So that means our developing wide receiver gets less attention, like our good developing wide receiver. So
More one-on-one opportunities.
and Jason Kelsey, they convinced to come back. So the running game, the O line stays the same. It's really, really promising, and I'm just afraid of getting my hopes up.
Okay, here's what I'll push back on. Here's what I'll bring you back down to earth a little bit. Yes, he's okay with having a running offense where my running back is the best running back in the NFL. Like you said, 2,000 yards. Miles Sanders ain't touching 2,000 yards, man. This is 850 to 900 yards per season is what we're getting out of Miles Sanders. So what do you see anything changing? Does AJ Brown being in the offense make you guys throw the ball more, or does it help the run game because I can't flood the box too much? I got to have some help because I have weapons at receiver. Which one do you see more?
That's a great question. I think that they'll probably stick to the formula they had last year, where they were one of the most dominant run teams in the NFL. Look,
on accident, low key on accident.
Well, not even on accident. It was against literally opposite of what they were trying to do for the.
That's what I mean. Right. That's what I mean.
Right. And but once they started running the football and realizing like, hey, we've got a lot of physical bodies, we can beat a lot of teams up. Hey, but they might be better at football than us, but we're stronger and we're faster, and that's really what matters. So like, they found something that works in that formula. I think what AJ Brown does within that is benefit from the fact that, hey, the Eagles are going to be in some run heavy sets. Maybe there will be some sets where you're going to have some tight ends close in on the line, and it's just Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. And that's probably going to be enough. That's probably going to be enough if you're able to get the defense to load the box. He's going to be able to see some more cover. It's very similar, as you said, and as Matt said, to his time in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. Not the same caliber, but the same mindset, I think.
I mean, I think your thinking and your concept is dependent on them still being, that would be a great running team, but still being a good running team. I got to see you guys be able to repeat that now that people are keen and onto that, which isn't impossible, but that's a different challenge. But Matt, to your point, a former wide receiver coach who loves wide receivers. He's also, Nick Sirianni I'm talking about, has this affinity with Jalen Hurts. I would sometimes say it's a little bit too buddy, like wearing him on your shirt at practice, but he has an affinity to Jalen Hurts. And I think he has a personal investment on seeing Jalen Hurts develop and succeed. That lends me to think the ball's going to go in the air more than it did last year. Miles is still going to get his touches. The offense is still going to be creative, still going to run the ball. But I think he's going to want to use Jalen Hurts, help him develop, and he's going to want to use the shiny new $100 million toy that just drove on the lot. Like, he's going to want to use that. I think you guys become more of a passing team this year. And we'll see what it goes.
Ultimately, game script, like if they're down a ton, yeah, they're going to pass more than they're going to run.
Sure.
So there's some of that plays into it. I just think when evaluating Jalen Hurts, and furthermore, like, yeah, he definitely wants him to be successful because that was the first really franchise quarterback he's been given. And I think that the way to make Jalen Hurts look the best he can possibly look is, number one, winning football games, and number two, doing it efficiently. And in my opinion, at least in the early going, until Jalen Hurts has proven, hey, I'm not the same guy as last year. I can really survive throwing the ball 40 to 50 times per game if needed, not every game. Until that happens, I think you're going to see a lot of play action and a lot of a heavy run attack. But that doesn't mean like Jalen Hurts isn't going to throw the ball differently than he did last year. Maybe he airs it out more and now gets more air yards and more, completion or touchdowns because he's airing the ball out. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see because I agree with you. Like, this is a big year for Jalen Hurts and Sirianni. So we'll see where they go.
The answer to your question, James, is basically how it depends on how good Jalen Hurts is. If Jalen Hurts steps up again and has like a top 10 quarterback season next year, they're going to throw the ball more. If he struggles and has a middling quarterback season, they're going to run the ball basically the same as they did last year because they're going to play to their strengths.
Right. How long are you willing to wait and see which one folds out? Because you don't know that in the first 3 weeks. The first 2 weeks or the first 3 weeks.
It took Sirianni 7 weeks to learn the offense last year.
It took the head coach 7 weeks to learn,
To learn. No, he changed his entire philosophy for the team.
Right.
After they started 2-5.
Well, because someone started pointing out, like, hey, man, I know the game plans are working, but we're low-key running the ball for like 150, 200 yards a game. Like,
on accident.
You want to keep running the ball?
Have you looked at our yards per carry? Like,
yeah, I'm telling you, it was on accident. We're not even trying to do it, and it's just happening. So I guarantee you it's on accident. All right. We're going to move on to the next new addition. I like this one. I want to shake up the room a little bit because this quarterback is known to shake up the room a little bit. The Carolina Panthers went and made some kind of home run swing, whatever swing it was, and traded for Baker Mayfield to get him out of Cleveland, to get him a new situation, and to go and, I guess, compete for a job with Sam Darnold over down there in Carolina. Let Robbie Anderson tell it, and they're not happy about it. But it's a new opportunity for Baker as he now enters training camp for Carolina. Everyone's going to be monitoring that situation. I definitely am, because I don't think he goes in definitely there as the starter. I think Sam Darnold still has it in his mind that I'm the starter or competing for this job. So I'm interested to hear what your guys' take on that, because they didn't give up much for him, a conditional 5th. So it's not like you give up a haul. It's not like you spent much on him. He's just a fresh face in the quarterback room. So, like, Jake, does he go in starter, competition, backup? What's Baker's role here?
Oh, man. I would love to say, they just traded for him. Of course he's going to be the starter, but
traded a bag of peanuts.
Not only did they trade a bag of peanuts, they did the same. They traded a similar bag of peanuts for Sam Darnold. So ultimately, I think it'll be a full-fledged competition. Like, truly, I don't know which of those two are better. I have no clue.
Oh, I know. It's easy. It's clearly Baker. Darnold's horrible.
Baker ain't that much above horrible.
Baker is like slightly below average if you just accumulate everything. But Baker's worst year is like Darnold's best. It's like
But Baker had a lot more to work with, and he's not great, but had a lot more to work with than Sam Darnold ever had to work with. I mean, coaching turnover, he got really, really sick one year. He probably shouldn't have been starting when he came in right away, just due to how much dysfunction there was with the Jets. I believe in 2 years, he never had a wide receiver play consecutively like 4 or 5 weeks because of injury and then suspension and saying whatever is going on. Like, it was never steady for Sam Darnold. And then goes to Carolina, and after 3 weeks loses the best weapon on his offense. Like, it's just never been
last 2 seasons. He has 18 touchdowns, 24 interceptions. That's like some 1970s stats right there.
Right, but did you hear all the context? Like, put a lot of people in that situation. Put a lot of people in the Jets organization. Adam Gase.
Think of how bad Carson Wentz was in 2020. He still threw 4 more touchdowns than interceptions. It's hard to be that below the TD interception ratio line.
I agree.
Darnold is laughably horrible. Baker Mayfield's just like the 22nd best quarterback.
And there's only 32 of them starting in the league. Like, so he's not. So
Darnold's probably like, if I'm ranking all the quarterbacks, he's probably like 52.
Oh, he's under some backups. That's
incredible. What
do you think, Minshew or Sam Darnold? I'd take Minshew without even thinking.
I think about it a little bit.
I think the point is that Sam Darnold is a very much unproven commodity. And it's funny that it's his 4th or 5th year in the league. What was he, 2018? So 18, 19, 20, 20. 4th year in the league. And we still don't really know what to think about him. So to say that Baker Mayfield, who...
They were in the same draft.
I'm looking at the draft right now. Mayfield, Saquon, Sam Darnold. What a terrible run out. And Saquon, I mean, we've talked about Saquon.
No, that's a good pick by the Browns. I don't care. You've never won a playoff game. Drafting Baker won you a playoff game.
They also drafted Denzel Ward, the cornerback.
Is it Josh Rosen in that?
Josh Rosen was 10th. There's 3 really good players. Quentin Nelson, Josh Allen, Roquan Smith went 6, 7, 8. Bradley Chubb, you could throw in there at 5 too. Is pretty good. But
after Saquon, Quentin Nelson, the best draft of that Of everyone you named right there.
By far. But
Yeah,
back to what we were talking about. I really do think that, and it's just Matt Rule from his time at Temple loves to spur competition, even if there is a guy who theoretically is better than another one. Leaving the door open, I think, gets the most out of your players, or at least that's the idea. So, sure, Baker's probably brought in here to be the starter. If Sam Darnold starts week 1, I would not be surprised at all. Wouldn't be surprised at all.
Okay, so Matt, if Baker's so light years ahead of Sam Darnold, what does Baker Mayfield bring to Carolina that Sam Darnold was unable to bring to Carolina? But give it to me that way.
He's a competent NFL quarterback. It's really that simple. He's not this. OBJ's dad made this video and it showed a bunch of really bad decisions by Baker Mayfield, and then everyone decided Baker Mayfield was like the worst quarterback to ever play in the NFL.
But they were ready to think that before that video. I think the video was just confirmation.
Well, people are predisposed to hate Baker because Baker has a punchable face. That's not an indictment on Baker Mayfield at all. He just has a punchable face. And I just like Baker in the beginning, but he was on too many commercials too early, whatever. But he won a playoff game for the Cleveland Browns. That's an incredible achievement. Some good
Historic.
Like Jeff Garcia couldn't do that. Like some decent quarterbacks that went through the Browns weren't able to do that.
But the Browns had a really good team. Like they were really a good team. That is why they did that. And in lieu of Baker,
OBJ was hurt that year, so Baker didn't miss him, which helped. No, they had a good team, and they had a good team last year, and Baker hurt them. He went on the road and won in Pittsburgh. Like that's a very good accomplishment. And he gave them a lot of hope his rookie year. They were the worst. He was the number 1 overall pick. He leads them. He has a winning record his rookie year. He takes over for Tyrod Taylor, and he has like a really good rookie year. He either wins rookie of the year or comes like second. And like they almost finish over 500. They go like 7-8-1. And then he's just a really up and down quarterback. But if he gets his confidence and swag back, there's no reason I don't think he can be a replacement level starting quarterback.
I mean, okay, so to your point, up and down year, I'm gonna use your stats. I'm gonna use your language here. Rookie year, 14th in DVOA. 2019, 25th in DVOA. 2020, come back, go to the playoffs, 10th in DVOA. Last year, rock bottom, 26th in DVOA. So like we're up and down, but to this point, like that's not what Carolina needs. Like if you're gonna bring inconsistency, we could have kept that conditional 5th.
Carolina's quarterbacks had a 68 passer rating last year.
Yeah, that's just. That's just really rough. Any way you square it, that's just really rough.
Baker had an 83 passer rating last year, and he stunk. Like it's hard to be
again.
that bad.
I think the quality of the.
Go ahead, Jake.
I was just gonna say the quality of the team really does matter because Sam Darnold was out there without Christian McCaffrey. It was him and Robbie Anderson slinging the thing around. I mean, like it's just like
a little bit of DJ Moore.
There are levels to the context, I think. And ultimately, whether it's Baker, I think if Baker ends up winning the starting job there and he gets stuck into that offense and you have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and McCaffrey to kind of keep him entertained, like he can probably manage some. I would imagine if you tell me Baker's going to play every game this year for the Panthers, I say they go like 9-8, 8-9, something like that, because they're going to have a decently easy record. And they have, obviously health plays into it a ton too, but and their conference and their division, I should say, is tough. But they've got a really good defense and they've got some weapons on offense, so like he can manage them there.
Here's where I'm coming from with it. I agree with you, Matt. I don't think Baker is that bad of a quarterback. I think he's bottom level of the mid-tier quarterback. So you're right, slightly below average, but doesn't move the ball for me. I was listening to Robbie Anderson on I Am Athlete, not to plug another podcast, but listening just to his testimony of Sam Darnold. And he said when Cam Newton came in, when Sam Darnold got hurt, like Cam Newton didn't play the best in the world. For 2 weeks, he looked like he was a good quarterback again, but he breathed new life and confidence into us. He was like, Cam came in as such a breath of fresh air, a professional, a guy who's done something and just gave us a new perspective and a new life and something to like rally around. something to believe in. So now Cam is gone. You go back to Sam Darnold, who people don't believe in. If you're going to bring another quarterback into that, bring a quarterback that we believe in. Do you believe in Baker Mayfield? If you were an NFL player, NFL wide receiver, after watching that debacle, would you believe in Baker Mayfield? Would he come into this locker room, to this organization, and make us believe in more in the guy that we're leaving? Because if not, then I don't see the upside. I don't see the addition. He's just a new face, but Baker doesn't.
You have a former number one overall pick who's shown he can play well, and you get him for cheap. You're only paying him $4 million. You take a risk.
But
that's
I think
the GM. That's from the GM standpoint. That's front office standpoint. I'm talking about player standpoint. A guy that is he going to elevate our team? For the GM, yeah, that's a no brainer.
I've never been in an NFL locker room throughout a season. I have no clue, but I can't imagine it differs too much from a regular workplace where QB also I think is elevated. Teammates I think look to the quarterback as a leader, or at least as someone who is put on a higher pedestal than the rest of the players. I think that is just a positional thing, the starting quarterback. Right. And I can have all these preconceived notions of Baker. I can see what Baker has done in past places. But if he comes in and works his butt off and has a great attitude and has swagger that people can buy into, sure, why not? Maybe you won't end up being the best team. But the best teams, first and foremost, have to believe they can be one of the best teams in the league, right? So that starts with the belief in who you have in the building. Apparently, from what you're saying, that wasn't evident. I didn't hear that interview, but sounds poignant to what we're talking about. Clearly they did not believe in Sam Darnold. Maybe that kind of swagger, that guy who's been there, could be Baker, and then you build from there.
What I'm doing is I'm taking Robbie Anderson's testimony and personally putting me in that space. So I hear what you're saying. I get the mindset. Now I'm imagining, man, I have no professional athlete mindset, but if I'm thinking of an athlete's mindset from what Robbie Anderson just explained, Cam brings that. Cam Newton, just his presence brings that. Does Baker's presence bring that? Or does he just bring a punchable face? Does he just annoy me? Does he bring that belief in me? When he says in the huddle, yo, we're about to go and score a touchdown and take the lead, do I believe him? Do I go yeah, I'm ready to run with you? Does that? Because if not, he's not doing anything more than what Sam Darnold was bringing. He's not bringing anything. Unless his play is that much better. Last year I didn't see his play be that much better.
I don't know. He is a little bit of somewhat of a leader in the sense that he's the guy who gets under the other team's skin, and you hate that person when they're against you, and you love that person when they're on your team. Him planting the flag in the middle of the field when they played
Ohio State.
Yes,
Ohio State.
That was Baker as a Heisman Trophy winner. Now, if Baker out there and winning Pro Bowls and MVPs, you can plant whatever you want wherever you want. But that's not what he's doing. You gotta back all that up with play.
Look, there's one out of however many players gets to be a Heisman per year, right? There's 32 out of however many players in the NFL who get to be a starting quarterback. So while it is not the same banner that you hold, I don't know, man. If you're a starting quarterback and you are as energetic and kind of spunky as Baker Mayfield is, maybe he can get the ball across. I don't know.
Baker's a confident guy. When his team's winning, his team likes him because he's confident they're winning. And then when they're losing and he's still confident and he's not playing well, the teammates don't like him because he's the reason they're losing. So it's a double-edged sword.
And you're right. And that confidence, and we can move on after I make this point, that confidence is great when, even as the team around him, that I'm confident in my ability to carry out his confidence. So, for example, in high school basketball, Jake, you'll remember this name. We had a kid, my guy, Ian Harrigan, was our point guard when I was a junior. I was his backup. So we go and play Academy Park, inner city school in Philly. And it's a really tough game. We're hanging with them. And then Ian gets in a little tussle with their center. Big 6'5", 6'6", built dude starts screaming at him. And then, they get broken up and everything. And so we're going in the locker room, and Ian's yo, kind of throws his hands up. And he's like, why was I out there by myself? And one of our players is like, yo, you got to pick a battle we can win. Like, if you barking at what you want me to jump in there and get hurt too? 2 black guys not gonna get us home. We won't get hurt too. So if you're Baker and you win the starting job and you're out there jawing with the defensive line, make sure your line can block who you're jawing. Make sure your receivers can beat who you're jawing.
Getting them in trouble.
Make sure you can beat who you're jawing to. Remember, you're on the Panthers now. Remember, you're on a bottom tier team now. You gotta maybe it's time to just rein it in and humble yourself a little bit. All that planting the flag stuff will get you hurt in Tampa.
Right, that's
behind him. New Orleans,
way behind him at this point, but
it better be. But I hear what you guys are saying. I'm kind of just playing devil's advocate, but I do hear what you're saying, and maybe Baker can be that fresh face for them. Speaking of fresh faces, we're going to keep going down the line because we talked about it off camera, how this team is getting a little bit disrespected, and they're the Super Bowl champions, so we kind of don't understand why. But they go and make a good trade at receiver after presumably not bringing OBJ back. Hasn't signed with anybody else, but it's pretty clear he's not going to sign back with the Rams. At least it's, pretty, that's where it's headed. But they go and trade for Allen Robinson, then sign him to a 3-year, $46.5 million deal. And you want to talk about not having consistency in your career. Let's just list off the starting quarterbacks of Allen Robinson's career. And remember, he's still a good receiver. First 2, Matt McGloin and Christian Hackenberg. That's at Penn State. So that he actually got a good Christian Hackenberg.
My quick take on Christian Hackenberg at Penn State is people only thought he was good is because he had Allen Robinson. Right when Allen Robinson left, Hackenberg collapsed.
True. So maybe he made Christian Hackenberg. Then we start getting to the nitty gritty. 2014 through 2016, goes and plays with Blake Bortles down there in Jacksonville. 2017 gets hurt. 2018 is now going to the Bears, has Mitchell Trubisky through 2018, 2019, has Nick Foles for 2020, and then has a rookie Justin Fields and half of Andy Dalton year in 2021 for the Bears. Never really had an upper echelon quarterback. That's just scary. That's a scary list.
I'm sure if you show him that list, when he was a rookie, that's something you wake up in cold sweats about. It was just a nightmare. Oh, thank goodness.
That's
I thought I wasted my career
before he had Kurt Warner.
Well, this is actually it's a very good comparison, but as you were saying.
No, I'm just you could take it from there because you just have to remember that we're not talking about a receiver who hasn't done anything in the league. We're talking about a receiver who is still looked at to be, upper half of receivers in the league, almost Pro Bowl, and now the Rams get a weapon.
Yeah, this is honestly for a team that somehow is capped out. They have no picks. Oh, yeah, no, we'll just add whoever we want for whatever price tag we want. We can do it.
Right.
Somehow they keep adding these guys that improve their team. So, you talk about disrespect. I think, the viewpoint on them is that, they're the same team that they were last year. Honestly, they probably lose some of the rotational pieces that made them a really deep team. But up top, you had Allen Robinson, and granted, you lose Robert Woods, and maybe lose OBJ. We're not sure about that yet. Probably looking that way, as you said.
Well, and ACL tear in the Super Bowl, he'd be out for a long time anyway.
Right. He would be out regardless. And now you had Allen Robinson, who, arguably, he has seen really high highs in his career already with those lists of quarterback, that awful list of quarterbacks that you put out. I think in his second year with Blake Bortles, he led the league in receiving touchdowns. And before last year with a really putrid Bears team, he averaged about 1,200 yards per year. So, to say he's anything other than a wide receiver 1, which on this team he probably won't be because of Cooper Kupp, but just in terms of overall NFL status, this guy is really, really good. And I don't think enough people are recognizing how big of a move this is.
Well, I think he seamlessly steps into the role that Robert Woods is. And let's remember that offense in Sean McVay had Robert Woods before the injury, almost having the same production, if not better than Cooper Kupp to start the season, was going crazy. And I think it's perfect for him because Cooper Kupp is such a dynamic wide receiver. He does everything in that offense. He'll run the jet sweeps. He'll be in tight. He'll be out wide. He'll run every route in the book. But I think you benefit from being a number 2 to that because a number 2 can just be a steady receiver. You run these 5 or 6 routes in the tree. You play on this side of the football. We ask you to do not a lot of things really well, and Cooper Kupp does everything really well. And I think if Allen Robinson steps into that kind of steady role, because we just talked about his career, nothing was steady around him, but yet he's doing well. Now give him steadiness, a steady role, a steady diet, steady coach, steady team. And, I think he gets right back on track to that averaging 1,200 yards a season. And the fact that he's done that with a combination of, Blake Bortles and Nick Foles and Andy Dalton and Mitch Trubisky is wild to me. Like, it's truly a testament to how good Allen Robinson can be in the league.
Allen Robinson, it's a tragedy that the year he got hurt was the one year that the Jaguars made the playoffs, too.
Yeah, right.
The only time he's made the playoffs, he got double doinked.
Yeah,
Tough.
You make a really actually good point about him now having steadiness around him. You know who that reminds me of? We were talking about it last year around the same time.
Matt Stafford.
His teammate Matt Stafford finally
yeah.
getting a solid team that isn't the Detroit Lions to play on, and we saw what happened. So ultimately, I think it's a really good signing. Now, I think what the calculus, the math comes down to for do they get better is compare him to their de facto wide receiver 2, which is actually a combination of 2 people. It was Robert Woods until he got hurt, and then they brought in OBJ. It actually adds up to 16 games played. In 16 games played, you combine both of their stats. Here's what wide receiver 2 looks like. 72 catches, 860 yards, 9 touchdowns in 16 games. Obviously, he'll be playing 17. So you can maybe beef him up a little bit. Does Allen Robinson go over or under those numbers, and where over or under? I mean, if you think it's less yards, more catches, whatever.
I think the catches goes down a little bit. 72 catches in 16 games, not bad, man. You get some targets. That's not bad. So I think the catches goes down. I think the yards we can probably pin him in for the run, because that's a down the field offense. That's an offense that sees a lot of volume in the passing game. Matt Stafford's going to throw that thing 35 to 40 times a game. So the yards will be there. I'm iffy about the 9 touchdowns. I think if we see 9 touchdowns, we're like, hey, Allen Robb is here, but it's not out of the question.
Right.
But that is a high total for a wide receiver 2, about to touch double digits in touchdowns. So
you say less yards or less catches and touchdowns, but more yards, right? Is where you say
around the same amount of yards, if not a little bit more, but not more less catches than touchdowns, if that makes sense. I could see around the 7-8 range for touchdowns, but maybe in the 65 range for catches.
Matt, how about you?
I think it's slightly under all of them. I think he gets around like 60-ish catches for 740 yards and like 6 or 7 touchdowns.
Only 700 yards. I could see the Rams having 2 1,000-yard receivers. They were going to last year if Robert Woods didn't get hurt. Cooper Kupp was still going to do his thing, and Rob Woods was going for like 1,250. Like they were about to have 2,000-yard receivers.
I just if I were I don't 861's a high number, so maybe it's 800. I think for a number 2, for the person who's getting the second most receiving yards on the team.
Well, I mean, it's not unheard of. We had 3 or 4 teams have 2,000-yard receivers last year.
Yeah, I know, but it's still unusual. And Robinson, he's been injured a little bit. And last year, he didn't have a great yards per game. I know he's only 20. He's still in his late 20s, so it's not like he's old.
And who was throwing him the ball? And
Justin Fields. I know Justin Fields couldn't throw last year because there was no offensive line. But he hasn't had, just for the touchdowns, which he hasn't had that many touchdowns since he had 14 in 2015. So I like before the whole AJ Brown trade happened, I really wanted the Eagles to get Allen Robinson. I thought it'd be a really good compliment. So I'm not down on Allen Robinson. I'm just slightly under. It's no disrespect.
So here is why I think both of you are wrong. And I think there is one true answer that we're going to find out here. And it's going to be that he is going to go over all of these. Maybe not touchdowns. Touchdowns is pretty high. I think he can get close to 8 or 9 touchdowns. I project him. But
you think he's getting over 72 catches?
And here's why. Cooper Kupp saw 191 targets. 191 targets in a year and 145 catches. He's catching 76% of them, right? And then he's also going for 16 touchdowns, almost 2,000 yards.
He didn't catch 145 balls. He didn't catch 145.
Something crazy like that, right? Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't make
146 and he didn't break it. So
that's ridiculous.
Doesn't. No, he made 145 is the answer, but it is insane to think. Maybe it will happen. Maybe crazy things do happen. Maybe Cooper Kupp will have this year again. But more than likely, teams are going to slide some more people Cooper Kupp's way.
Down a little bit.
And you're going to see some red zone looks for Allen Robinson, and you're also going to see a lot of single coverage. I imagine he'll get around these stats, if not a little better, if they still are that top echelon team.
That's true. And that was going to be my next point after that. It's not just about the player Allen Robinson is. Like Matt Stafford's case, it's the team he's going to. This is a coach in Sean McVay who loves to utilize his weapons and has a very good idea of what that number 2 receiver can do. And, I just think when you have a sure-handed receiver like Allen Robinson, I mean, we talked about all this turmoil around him, and he didn't waver. Any guy who can not waver with all that change and all that inadequacy around him shows me that when he goes to a team that has the foundation, he's gonna hit the ground running. Yeah. So I think Allen Robinson is prime for that. And Penn State boy, got a shout out for my Penn State boy. All right, we're gonna move on because it's time to address the big news that the best team in the NFL has just made in the last 2 days. The Buccaneers going and acquiring Julio Jones. Okay. You just gave Tom Brady another weapon. What, Jake? What?
I know you're only doing this because it is the Buccaneers. I get it. But you say the Rams are disrespected, and this is why. They had Allen Robinson, and people are like, man, whatever. And then Julio Jones goes to Tampa Bay after being awful since he left Atlanta. Awful.
Because who was his quarterback?
Whatever. Who was AJ Brown's quarterback? Regardless, I think it's a good move for the Bucs, but let's calm down a little bit.
Julio played for the 1 seed in the AFC last year. It's not like he was on a bad team.
But he didn't have the best quarterback ever created throwing him the ball. And now he does. He never had that, and now he does. So let's get all the facts out of the way before I go. He did struggle in Tennessee last year, career low in yards per game, touchdowns, and receptions. So in 10 games, 31 catches, 434 yards, and 1 touchdown. The touchdowns is very similar to his time in Atlanta because he would only have that in his whole season. Missed 14 games in the last 2 seasons, but a little bit injury-ridden. But he comes to Tampa Bay, and is he the best wide receiver in this room anymore? Probably not. Actually, probably would still take just overall sense Mike Evans and Chris Godwin over him at this point. But that's perfect because that's what Julio Jones comes in to be. And I understand that you don't want the best team in the league to get any better, so I understand why people want to try to downplay who and what Julio Jones is. But that's why he's such a great addition to this Buccaneers room, because he comes in as that third wide receiver. And that veteran presence that's going to know what to do. He's seen every coverage. He's seen every situation. So it's a guy that Tom Brady doesn't have to worry about making the right reads in a situation. He's going to be able to go and do that. So give him a limited role. Give him one-on-one opportunities. Give him a shortened time on the field to maximize it all. And you're going to get the best out of Julio Jones. Let's remember, when Antonio Brown came in, when Antonio Brown seemingly did what Julio Jones is doing now and comes in and beefs up this wide receiver room, was he crazy during the regular season? No. He didn't make that many splashes in the regular season.
Not publicly.
But what he do, right, not on the field, but what did he do come playoff time? That Super Bowl run, he has a great NFC Championship game, and then catches a touchdown in the Super Bowl. At the time, a crucial touchdown, ended up running away with the game. But at the time, the touchdown to give us the lead in the Super Bowl. So Julio Jones steps right into that slot. And last year and 2 years ago, we can go into the playoffs and Mike Evans starts seeing more coverage and Chris Godwin starts seeing more coverage. Who did Tom Brady go and find then? Tyler Johnson starts having big games. Scotty Miller starts having big games. I'm sorry. So now you're telling me that when Chris Godwin and Mike Evans start seeing more attention, it's not Tyler Johnson getting the target, it's Julio Jones? Oh, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You can't downplay this at all to me, because I'm not asking for 1,000 yards and 12, 15 touchdowns out of Julio Jones. I'm asking for a veteran presence and big moments into the playoffs and later in the season. And you're fooling yourself, Statbat Robinson. You're fooling yourself if you think Julio Jones can't give that to me. No, that's on your face. You're fooling yourself if you think Julio Jones can't give that to me with the best quarterback God's ever put on this earth throwing him the ball. I'm just saying.
It's just disrespectful to. I thought
saying.
of a comparison, but it's disrespectful to Julio because it's unfair to compare it to him. But I'm gonna do it anyway. It kind of reminds me of when Chad Ochocinco went to the Patriots and he was washed, didn't do anything on that team.
That's fair. No, that's fair. That's not that bad.
No, because Julio Jones is a way better receiver than Chad Ochocinco.
Maybe
way
at
better.
one point.
No,
right.
Ochocinco has no chance of making the Hall of Fame. Julio Jones is absolutely going to make it there. Julio,
see what a ring this year.
Julio might have some nice important catches on third down in a playoff game, but like but if I were going to do I'll do a second comparison. It's almost like this is even more disrespectful to Julio, but the play styles are similar. It's like Alshon Jeffrey late in his Eagles career. Like that's what I see. He's a guy who's just not there anymore. He might make a tough catch in certain situations, but he's not a guy who can create separation. He's not a guy who you can rely on in big situations. He's a regular run-of-the-mill third receiver. And that's why he was able to be signed in July.
Jake, you're going to let him do that? You're going to just to make a point, you're going to let him do that? Call him a run-of-the-mill receiver? You're like, Alshon Jeffrey, the guy who dropped a pass to take y'all to the NFC Championship game, that guy, he's like that guy.
Alshon Jeffrey caught a huge touchdown in the Super Bowl, just like the guy that you compared him to.
I may, low-key may have had my argument swiveled a little bit here. I'm digging around as you guys were talking on Football Reference here. And I didn't, honestly, I dogged on Julio the last 2 years. He's only played 10 games in last year, 9 games of the year before that. And I was like, let me just see what so a total of 19 games. Let me see what it bears out for the 17 game average. And if you put those games, that pace to a 17 game, a season, 104 targets, 73 catches for almost 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Run-of-the-mill receiver. That's what I was told. Run-of-the-mill receiver.
Maybe, you know what? That was definitely a little bit of a radicalizing stat dive there for me.
Every time we talk about a receiver, and we just did it with the last segment when we talked about Allen Robinson, what do I always say to y'all? Who's throwing him the ball? It's not bummy Matt Ryan and mid Ryan Tannehill anymore. It's the greatest quarterback ever. The guy who made Chris Hogan look good, and Scotty Miller look good, and Danny Amendola look good. That's that guy.
I do. It is worth noting, while we're not trying to be disrespectful, Matt Ryan did win an MVP during that time. Did win an MVP?
Bummy.
Okay.
He bummy.
Anyways, I think it's a solid, oh my gosh. It's a solid addition. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole right now. It's a solid addition to an already very solid team where you're looking at Russell Gage as your 4th wide receiver. 2 years ago, Julio and Russell Gage were the 1 and 2. Now they're the 3 and 4 on a team. It's crazy. No, it's not on par with the Allen Robinson signing, but it is still a plus to that given team.
I think it may not have the impact and the magnitude, but the scheme fit gets the same amount of plus points. Because the Rams are looking for a number 2. They probably got the best number 2 they could get on the market. We got a 3rd or 4th option, and it's Julio Jones. It's a 3rd, and it's Julio Jones. That's the 3rd or 4th.
Good place to be in.
Good place to be in. Matt, you got a rebuttal?
He's not that good anymore. He doesn't get to play games. He's just not that good anymore. I love Julio. I love Julio. I think he has one of the greatest plays in NFL history that no one will remember, and I think that's a tragedy. But
what play is that?
In the Super Bowl when he caught it on the sideline.
And should have broken all 4 or 5 of his toes.
Won the game because it put him in field goal range with 3 minutes to go, up 8, but whatever.
That's probably one of the greatest toe taps I've ever seen.
It's also a great throw. I don't want to keep doing this, but it's also a great throw. It's one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history, in my opinion, because it's such a perfect throw and a perfect catch against perfect defense.
You've played right into his hands, James.
Football. It's great football against great football. So I'm not even going to say the name of I'm not going to make it because
not going to say
I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing that, but it's just like an incredible football play that got sullied by bad coaching.
Honestly, Matt Ryan needs someone in his corner as much as you're in his corner. He needs somebody there.
Local
Because-
He's
guy,
an
man.
Exton boy too.
Yeah, local guy.
And don't do anything for me. We're not from Exton. We're from 2 towns over. I'm not from.
I'm not
I'm
from
from-
Exton either, but I drive
from-
there a lot.
Yeah, I'm shoot down 113. That's where I'm from. I'm not from Exton, so I got no ties. No, but I don't want to be that down on Matt Ryan, but I'm just that high on the Julio Jones signing. So he goes into a different offense too. We talked about the offense that Tennessee is a run heavy, run first offense, even without Derrick Henry. Still like to be run first and run heavy. And then, so if if Ryan Tannehill, same quarterback, if Ryan Tannehill is throwing the ball 17, 18 times a game, he didn't catch that, Jake. If Ryan Tannehill is throwing the ball 17, 18 times a game, and A.J. Brown is getting 9 of them, Jonnu Smith is getting 6 to 7 of them, Julio got 2-3 targets to eat up with 2-3 other receivers. Tom Brady throws this thing around the yard. And at 42, we'll throw it 40 times if the game calls for it. And I don't know. Give me Julio Jones as my number 3 wide receiver going either. Let me say it now on the airwaves, and it's not going to change. The Buccaneers will be the 2023 Super Bowl champions.
Wow, that's so brave of you to say.
But it's not me just being a homer. Like, I truly believe it's straight facts is what it is, Jake. I haven't heard you two come out and say the Eagles are Super Bowl winners.
Well,
They're
I'm a
not going to.
realist.
You guys love. So am I. So am I.
Okay, then don't
We
act like
just
you're going
won
out
it.
on a branch. Your team already
We
won the
just
Super
won
Bowl
it. That's
recently.
why I'm not. That's why
I
it's
have
not me
my
going
Super
on a
Bowl.
bridge.
I have my Super Bowl pick. I'll let you guys know later.
That should be. We should reveal those last episode of the offseason.
We'll do our big prediction episode,
Yeah.
last episode of the offseason, y'all. You could just check tape on mine.
Right, play the tape back here.
Run it. Play the tape. Run it. Super Bowl champions. Really quick. We'll go through this last one really quick because it happened a little bit ago. We just haven't gotten a chance to really cover it on the podcast. That's Russell Wilson going to the Denver Broncos, kind of completing all the infinity stones that is the AFC West over there because it is ridiculous. But they sent a haul over to Seattle to get him. Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, and 2 first-round picks, the 2022 9 overall and the 2022 and 9th overall in the 2023 draft. Also 2 second-round picks and a 2022 5th round to the Seahawks. So they sent all this over. They get Russell Wilson, and just the simple question and simple matter of the fact is, where do you rank Russell Wilson now amongst quarterbacks in this division? Because now he goes into a loaded division with Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. So where do you rank Russell Wilson now out of those 4?
He is 2, and if you put Herbert over him, it's disrespectful to his career to put Herbert at this point over him. Completely disrespectful, I would say.
Thank you.
That is something and I like the Chargers. Unlike James, I'm actually high on the Chargers, but I still think it's a bridge too far if you're going to be putting Carr or Herbert over him at this point. I mean, he's a Super Bowl champion, so
I think it's recency bias to do that because the last 2 years in Seattle haven't looked good, but
Russell
last 2
still
years
put
in
up
Seattle-
good, decent numbers.
Right.
Everyone's talking about how
Right.
bad he was last year. That's a great quarterback's bad year. That's what he had. He had a bad year for a great quarterback, but that's still a decent year overall. And everything was going wrong. After 2016, they really messed up how to build that team, and Wilson kind of got caught with no offensive line, and it was just a disaster. And now he's finally in a fresh place with talent, with a team that was a quarterback away, and he's there. And again, to answer your question, it's 2. And if you argue that he's not, you're being really stupid and silly.
Either way,
No,
you're being
stupid's the wrong
either
word.
way.
You're being silly because it's not an argument.
Right.
Russell Wilson's best last year is almost as good as Herbert's year last year, statistically speaking. And he had way less weapons than Herbert did because Metcalf had a really bad year and Tyler Lockett was injured a decent amount.
And I think it's disrespectful either way because you're not going to go and put him 1. You're not going to go ahead and put him, above Patrick Mahomes. But at the same time, you're not going to stoop him as low as Justin Herbert or Derek Carr. So
If you go Derek Carr, I'm just not going to talk football with you anymore.
Yeah.
If someone tells me Derek Carr is better than Russell Wilson right now, I'm
Leave
going to say, okay, I'm not. You're not worth talking football with.
Right.
Leave it to Matt's coworker. He'll whip one of those takes out eventually.
True. You be going through it over there.
Here, I'm actually going to come out with a pretty strong take here. I think there is a very real chance, and this kind of goes against what we talked about when we went over this division. I think there's a very real chance that Russell Wilson could win the NFL MVP this year for two reasons. Number one, he is by far more outfitted to do so with this offense than he really ever was with Seattle. I don't know. Maybe I'm overlooking. They had some good teams, so maybe I won't go that far. But the big piece of it, this will be the first year in Russell Wilson's career where he will be actually facing the fourth hardest schedule. Like in terms of division, you either face the other teams, first. If you finish first, if you finish second, you face the other number twos. So Denver finished fourth in their division. This is the first time in Russell Wilson's career he will have the easiest possible schedule. And I think you're going to see him reap the benefits of that. Plus, like
Weapons.
a lot of people poo-poo on the Broncos team overall last year. They were a quarterback away from being elite. Their defense, 3rd in points allowed, 8th in yards allowed, whereas their offense was 23rd in points scored, 19th in yards gained, like lower third.
And Jake, remind me what the last thing Russell Wilson did with a top-end defense. Dominate. Okay.
Ringed them.
Yeah, ringed them. So, okay. So I agree.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe we might be looking at a little sneaky NFL MVP wager. Go on FanDuel and plop in some money so I can be right about being right.
I mean, you are not only are you the degenerate on the podcast, but you spoke something into existence last year. Your Eagles
Rams.
making the playoff ticket,
and the Eagles.
Rams. Yeah, 2 of them hit, which it didn't look like.
That means fade me this year. That means some SHIT is going wrong, man.
Yeah, you really hit on them both. But all right, real quick before we end the segment, give me the Broncos win total by the end of the season. Then
11 is safe. 10 or 11. I don't know. That's if I'm saying he's MVP, he's got to win 10 or 11
at
least. But safe 10 or 11.
Safe 10 or 11.
He wins 10.
He wins 10. You got to remember 6 of these games are against the division and teams he hasn't played too many times before.
Yeah.
All AFC teams out west. He was out west, but all AFC teams. It's not like he's got much experience with this, so there may be some stumbles along the way. But I like that 10 or 11, Jake. I might be a little bit higher than 10 and say 11. But those were some of the new additions for the NFC. We'll have a 2-parter to this episode next week. We'll go to the other conference in the NFL and name the top AFC new additions as training camp gets started, man. I know everybody out there is hyped for the team to go on the field. Buccaneers, this was day 2 of training camp. Eagles, what, day 2, day 3 of training camp for y'all?
I don't know the answer exactly.
Day 1 or day 2?
Day 1 or day 2. So training camp is just starting for a bunch of people. So I know everybody's hyped. But we're almost out of time for this episode of Straight Facts. As always, we can get to the shots about the buzzer. Matt, go ahead and get yours out the way so we have enough time for Jake. I didn't mean to say it like that, but we know Jake's got something waiting.
I just want to give a huge shout out to my mom and dad. They went on this past weekend. They biked 150 miles for charity.
Oh my goodness!
So, and they were not bikers before this year. So my dad became part of this charity organization after he retired for leukemia, and we're doing this biking thing in Wisconsin. So they did all the research, did the bike, got the bike gear, practice, worked their way up 5 miles to 10 miles to 15 miles to 20 miles to 30 miles to 40 miles
to 150.
Well, it was over 2 days, so 75 miles. Then you sleep in a hotel, and then 75 miles again, and then you take a bus back. And they did it, and now they're enjoying a nice vacation. My dad's playing Whistling Straits as we speak right now. That's a very famous golf course in Wisconsin. They held a PGA championship and a U.S. Open there. So
how is he walking? How's he moving? Like,
well, they got massage the day after. They got full body massages.
Yeah. There you go. Get something. Got to get the shock doctor after that. I don't even know if I can move after that. So testament to your parents, man. That's awesome. And it was for a good cause.
Yeah.
You said it was for charity too.
That's all.
That's awesome, man. All right, Jake, hit us with it.
So we all know the NFL season's coming almost here, and I could not help but escape an NBA stat came across my timeline from my friend Matt Moore, Basketball Paradox, or Hardwood Paradox, on Twitter. And he posted a list of the top two-man pairings in offensive rating. So two players, when they're on the floor together, who has the highest offensive rating in the entire league. There is one team with 3 entries into this. It looks like a top 15. 3 entries into the top 15. There is one person who is on this list 3 times. There's one person who is, he's actually second with our guy Joel Embiid. That being Mr. James Harden. James Harden second with him. Harden and Embiid are second to Kyrie and KD. Kyrie and KD putting up 123 offensive rating. That is sickening. Harden and Embiid just behind him, but then it's Harden and Maxey is on the list at number 5. You have Harden and Tobias Harris on the list all the way down there. It's maybe 10 or 12. I'm not going to count all the way through. All that to say this, okay? We have an MVP on this team. And it's not the fake MVP that I say Joel has. It's the real MVP that James Harden won. And James Harden isn't getting enough respect is what I've came around to. When fully healthy, he is going to be putting up 28, 10, and 10. And the Sixers aren't going to be, second round good. They're going to be NBA championship good. Okay? There's no more a joke on defense when you have PJ Tucker in there, and you're going to have a healthy Embiid for some time. Who knows how long. But all this to say, James Harden is still good at basketball. Really good on offense.
I don't understand why I wouldn't like that. I'm with you.
I'm scared that he's just said what I'm scared to admit that I believe out loud.
Yeah, you do. Let yourself get
this
there.
propaganda about Harden being healthy and back is really getting to me.
Here's one, Jake, I'm with you until 28, 10, and 10. Give me 23 to 25, 10, and 10. 28, 10, and 10 is like old Houston Rockets James Harden. I don't know if we got that anymore.
Yeah. For me, I just want the percentages up.
But here's what is unfair to James Harden is you guys are transferring pain from somebody else onto him. Like somebody else did you wrong when they underperformed. That somebody else wasn't James Harden. That somebody else has nothing to do. The only common thing they have is they were in the same trade. And they both at one point played for the Brooklyn Nets.
That's
but
one of them didn't.
No, that's true. He hasn't suited up yet. That's true. He has not suited up yet. Ridiculous. But don't allow the pain that Ben Simmons gave to y'all and use that PTSD to now try to anticipate the hurt that James Harden would bring. That's Jake. You said he's an MVP.
Like I'm back on my delusional Sixers are winning next year tip. Like it's on. It's on.
I mean, we talked about this 2-3 episodes ago last episode we did a Speaking Facts, and we talked about has he shown the signs of getting back to being a productive player on a championship team? You guys said yes. Philly says yes. I say yes. Like, I think it's okay, Matt. It's okay to let yourself get there. You're like the person who got done wrong and dumped and now won't let yourself love again. Like, let yourself get there.
Analogy. That's how I feel.
Let yourself get there. That's not fair to your next partner. You ain't do that. Because if you weren't ready for it, don't trade for it. Don't love again then. Don't be in this relationship if you weren't ready. You should trade for him then. But allow yourself to get there. Jake, I'm on board.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
25, 10, and 10.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there.
We'll get me there. My the buzzer is much less sports related. So I ran into a situation with my boss today at work, and I'm not going to air out the situation. And before I say this, I don't want to be speaking ill on my boss at work. If she's listening, I appreciate the support, and it's not going to air out any dirty laundry. I just want to speak on the fact of like being a leader and leadership styles. And I think a common misconception or a common wrong way of doing things, especially when you get to corporate America, is thinking that everyone under you, all employees, have to listen to just your style and have to all conform to the way you do things. Like, I understand as a boss and a leader, you want to set a tone, you want to set a culture, and you want to set a precedent. I completely understand that. But I think the best leaders, the best bosses realize that people have different communication styles. And if you want to be just as effective in communicating with your star player as the last player on your bench, you got to realize that not everybody is motivated the same. Not everybody's wired the same. Not everyone receives messages the same. So if you're truly, truly at heart worried about building a good team and getting the most out of everybody, then you have to be okay with changing your communication style, not your leadership style, not who you are. But I know that this certain way of words, that this certain animation is going to motivate X, but it's not going to motivate Y. So I have to speak to Y in a different way if I want the most out of Y. If I don't care about getting the most out of Y, speak to him the same way, you'll get a different result. But if you truly want the best out of every single person you have there, realize that everyone's got a different personality and learn how to effectively communicate with those people. It's just game from a young gent. That's all I got.
I would say that's incredibly insightful. And it's like what I always say, when working by yourself, IQ is the most important. When working with a team and working to build something together and do something together, EQ, emotional quotient, knowing person-to-person skills is way more important than being the smartest person in the room. And I think that's exactly what you detailed there. And it's a little bit, that hits home for me as someone who is just kind of starting, becoming a manager in my job. Like, I definitely hear that. And it's something that I think everyone can kind of take a lesson from.
Yeah. To plug I Am Athlete again. Go ahead.
Yeah, that it's very telling about who's new to it, at least in my experience, versus who's been there a while, by the way whether they treat everyone with the same general overall attitude, or whether they deal with someone in a person-to-person basis in a management style. And it's all the second, because once it's not just as an employee, you notice that they've noticed you, so it makes you understand their criticism instead of it's like a YouTube video come to life kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. And I think people get the saying, treat everyone with the same respect a little bit misconstrued in that sense. Like, I'm not saying your star player gets more respect than your bench player. Everyone gets the same amount of respect, but the communication has got to change if they're not getting it. Like, if you're not getting the most out of it, how do I change for this person to get it? And really quick, I'll say this really quick before we ride out, not to plug I Am Athlete again, but the Asante Samuel episode in it, they asked him who's the best coach he's ever been coached by. Who do you think is the best coach ever? And he's been coached by Bill Belichick, but also Andy Reid. And he was quick to say, he's like, Andy Reid's the best coach. Like, Bill Belichick can have all the rings. He went to the Tom Brady argument, but he's like, Andy Reid cares about you. Andy Reid not only is successful, but he's going to go out your way to make sure that, like, his players know he's there for them. He cares about you as an individual. He would try to connect with you. He's like, Bill, not doing any of that. And it's the exact opposite. The style I think is not good, where you go in and it's all the Patriot way, no matter who you are, where you come from, what you do. You do it our way or the highway. And I think that's got a very limited success rate. So just my little tidbit, just wanted to, get something off my chest a little bit, share a little bit of game. But that's all the time we have for this game in this episode of Straight Facts. Shout out to everyone on Up On Game. Game is being thrown around here. But shout out to everyone on the Up On Game Presents Network, LeVar Arrington, Plexico Burst, TJ Husmanzada. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to them on all platforms. And shout out to my guys, Jake Galley and Stat Matt Robertson. I'm James Jackson. These have been the facts.
Straight up.